About to go into a dark winter, a dark winter.
It'll be a dark winter,
We're still facing a very dark winter.
Without better planning, 2020 could be the darkest winter in modern history.
Dark winter. Is it just a little phrase that is being used by a few prominent people in government to just possibly indicate that it could be rough this winter? Or is it soft disclosure of an actual PSYOP that has been conducted by the government and now being used against the American people? That's the question a lot of people are having right now. And I'll admit that when I first heard Joe Biden use it in the last debate with Donald Trump, I noticed it when he said it, and I knew of what dark winter was a little bit, but I kept thinking, well, maybe it was just a passing phrase to indicate that we could be in for a rough haul for a few months with the pandemic and flu season and election and all this other stuff. So I decided to start doing some research on my own. And as far as I am aware, no one has really talked about this, at least as extensively as what I'm going to try to present to you today. So hopefully this will kind of help give you a better idea of what dark winter is, and maybe if it is the same thing that has been talked about by several people. I'm not trying to necessarily change or direct your opinion in any way. I just want to present to you what's out there that a lot of people just aren't aware of. And the little clip there at the beginning, obviously you saw Joe Biden, but there was also a particular scientist or doctor this past summer that mentioned it. And then the other person in the mask was the chairman, the House chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. So, and that was just in the last few days. For those of you that aren't quite sure what Dark Winter, or at least Operation Dark Winter is, it was a military exercise that was conducted back in 2001, so almost 20 years ago, before 9/11 attacks. And basically in this operation, a military game, they determined that if a pandemic, a bioterrorism attack or pandemic struck the United States, and in that particular operation, they were using the smallpox as possibly the catalyst for the pandemic, that it would be very devastating, that it could cause mass destruction and a mass breakdown of basically every system that keeps this nation afloat. It was an extremely devastating study. What's interesting, though, as I dig into it, is that that was not the only one. That was the first in a series of military exercises and war games. This next one, if you look over here, was in 2005 called Atlantic Storm. Then 2017, the SPARS pandemic of 2025 through 2028. 2018 was Clade X. And then finally in October of 2019, the all-infamous Event 201, which took place just shortly, a few weeks before the public declaration of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And Event 201 they used a COVID-19, a coronavirus as the pandemic in that drill or that exercise. You know, there are a lot of speculation and a lot of theory behind a lot of these joint military games and exercises and operations that are for training purposes only, but then somehow strangely end up becoming real-world scenarios. I won't go into a lot of details, but 9/11, Sandy Hook shooting, look that kind of stuff up. And there's a few more to kind of get you started. This dark winter has actually been around for a while and been talked about. I'm going to show you some clips of a trailer. And before we get going, I'm going to let you know this is for a video game. So I'm not saying that the video game has necessarily, because I don't play video games. We don't even have a video game device in our home. I'm not saying that there's anything important in the video game itself or that it's trying to disclose any information. The video game is a Tom Clancy video game, and it was one of the last projects, video game projects he worked on before he passed away. And it is about Dark Winter. And what is interesting in the trailer is it gives a lot of good information about this military exercise. Pretty much everything that's talked about was in the report. I can't show the whole thing because copyright laws won't let me, but I'll show a few clips here to start off with. This is basically what they, how to get it started, what it was about.
In 2001, a real-world exercise tested the emergency response to a bioterror attack on the continental United States. The operation was called Dark Winter. Within just a few days, the simulation spiraled out of control. The operation predicted a rapid breakdown in essential institutions, civil disorder, and massive civilian casualties.
And then it goes into how bad it's going to be for us, okay? So let's go into that clip.
Dark Winter has revealed how vulnerable we've become. Our lifestyle, our security, our safety depends on a delicate and unstable economy. We've created a system so complicated that we no longer understand how to control it. Oil, power, shipping, transport. We've created a house of cards. Remove just one, and everything falls apart.
I'll leave a link to this video, this video game trailer in the description below. I would encourage you to go watch it. Again, I get it. It's just a video game. Tom Clancy, though, had a reputation for writing books that were amazingly accurate and based on factual government information. So is there something more to this? The actual Operation Dark Winter, though, you can find it online, or at least you can find the declassified parts of it, and the script, the end results, and everything. And I went through that, and it's kind of interesting, I guess, to say the least. But it talks about what will happen, what could happen, and how the government would respond to it. And look at some of this stuff here. We have quelling civil disturbances. Says state and local governments have primary responsibility for quelling rebellions. The president may use the military, including federalized National Guard, to quell civil disturbances in states upon the governor's request. Rebellions that make it difficult to enforce federal law, and any insurrection that impedes a state's ability to protect citizens' constitutional rights and that state is unable and unwilling to protect these rights. Goes down here, some government attorneys believe that the Insurrection Act is subject to very liberal interpretation. Talks about civil liberties. Public health law is primarily a state concern. The judicial decisions indicate that forcible inoculations and quarantine of infected patients may be constitutional. Secretary of Human and Health Services has the authority, listen to this, to issue regulations that authorize federal agencies to respond to the spread of a communicable disease across state lines. Likely including quarantine of patients, forcible blood draws and inoculations, disposal of bodies in ways contrary to personal beliefs, and related restrictions on liberty. The director of the CDC may take measures likely including the list set forth above to prevent the spread of a communicable disease upon determining that a state is not acting sufficiently to prevent the spread of the disease. So in other words, the CDC can step in if a particular state is not doing what they feel is enough The CDC can step in and kind of take over in a lot of ways. A person who has a communicable disease in a communicable period shall not travel from one state or possess to another without a permit from the health officer. Martial rule. These are some interesting things. This constitutional charges, the Constitution charges the president to take care of the laws be faithfully executed, and Congress to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union. I'll leave links to this stuff in the Patreon description below. Martial law depends for its justification upon public necessity. Necessity gives rise to its creation. Necessity justifies its exercise. Necessity limits its duration. The extent of the military force used and the actual measures taken, consequently, will depend upon the actual threat to order and public safety which exists at the time. The president normally announces his decision by proclamation, which should detail the substance of the martial law. Talks about judicial decisions and scholarly articles indicate that the president has some meta-constitutional authority to act in times of national emergency. The preconditions for martial law are unclear, but it is likely that the preconditions for imposing martial rule are satisfied if a crisis threatens to undermine the stability of the U.S. government. This is a government document that came out of Andrews Air Force Base, which some of you are familiar with that. This is Operation Dark Winter. The parameters for martial law are unclear, such as whether martial rule could impose over entire swaths of the U.S. or whether martial rule must be confined only to areas which the crisis occurring. Options for martial rule include, but are not limited to, prohibition of free assembly, national travel ban, quarantine of certain areas, suspension of writ of habeas corpus, and or military trials in the event that the court system becomes dysfunctional. Here's something else that I found interesting about Operation Dark Winter. While everyone that was involved was either directly with the DOD, military, executive branch, CIA, but if you scroll down to the bottom, when I pulled up some information on it, it lists all the parties involved. And guess who was involved that was not part of the government? That's right, the mainstream media. NBC correspondent was there and part of it. CBS News correspondent was there. The BBC correspondent was there. And the New York Times reporter was all part of this Operation Dark Winter. So it's kind of interesting that here we are now dealing with this pandemic, and the media is so involved in it and so involved in pushing the agenda of the pandemic. And now we have President-elect Joe Biden up there trying to act like a president and already talking about the coronavirus. I mean, that's been his only objective, it seems, at least since he's been elected by the news media. I have a gut feeling that he is going to continue on and act like a president. He's going to probably, we might see it publicly, and he might be doing it behind closed doors, of convincing governors to go forth with some type of mask mandate or lockdowns. I think that is going to be a big push from him. Now, does it mean that it's all part of Dark Winter? Again, I cannot confirm that. What I can say, though, is that there's a whole lot more about this Dark Winter and the subsequent operations that came after that, dealing with pandemics leading up to Event 201, that do seem pretty suspicious. We have, there's just quite a bit of information out there, And when you see how many times now it's being used, the phrase dark winter, and even if they may say that, well, it has nothing to do with Operation Dark Winter, the things that are happening do kind of line up with the response that they felt was necessary after they did these military war games. Even with the president, in charge, President Trump in charge, as we all know, the deep state and the heads of a lot of these agencies, they tend to kind of do their own thing against him. And so I think, personally, we need to be aware that this push for this dark winter could be a very real thing. It seems kind of strange that it all does line up quite the way that it does. Again, maybe it's just a coincidence. It could just be that, but it also could be a little bit more. So watch the video game trailer, because it has a whole lot more in it. I don't want to show very much of it because you're only allowed to show just a few seconds of copyrighted material like that, and it could cause me to get banned on here. So I would encourage you to take the time. It's like 3.5, 4 minutes long, to watch the full trailer. It's certainly eye-opening. And again, it's just a video game, right? It is. But it's a video game based specifically on dark winter and the military reports from that. And so I think it's a kind of a good visual way to get inside of what that operation is. Of course, I'm sure it's very dramatized because it's a video game, but I don't think that most of the facts, and when you watch it, you'll see the facts that they present in the little trailer aren't really, they're not off on it. Maybe just, kind of dramatized is all. Anyways, folks, let me know what you think. Dark winter, slip of the tongue, or is it some kind of soft disclosure letting us know that that's what we're facing? Who knows? I guess time will tell. All right, folks, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.